The message came at midnight, ship time. John Morrison was sitting alone in his cabin, looking at old photographs of Earth, when the communication screen lit up with symbols he had never seen before. The ship's computer translated them slowly, and John felt his heart grow cold as he read the words. You are summoned to appear before the Galactic Council. You will speak for your species. Failure to appear will be considered an act of war. John was 53 years old. He had gray hair at his temples and lines on his face from years of hard decisions. He had been a starship captain for 20 years before becoming a diplomat. He had seen alien worlds that would make a person cry from their beauty. He had also seen things that gave him nightmares. But nothing had prepared him for this. Humanity had joined the galactic community only 30 years ago. In the eyes of the older species, humans were like children who had just learned to walk. The Galactic Council was made up of 12 ancient races that had ruled the stars for over 10,000 years. They had watched empires rise and fall. They had seen species born and die. And they had never, in all that time, summoned a human to stand before them. John walked to the bridge of his ship, the Horizon's Edge. His crew was already waiting for him. They had seen the message, too. Lieutenant Una Park stood at the communications station. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a quick mind. She could speak over 40 alien languages, and she understood the cultures behind them even better than the words. When John entered, she looked at him with worry in her eyes. Captain, she said, I have been trying to find out more information, but every channel I contact goes silent. Something is very wrong. Commander Taeho Kim stood near the door, his arms crossed over his chest. He was a large man, with a soldier's posture and a soldier's scars. He had fought in the border conflicts 10 years ago, when human colonies were attacked by raiders from the outer systems. He had saved many lives and taken many others. He did not speak much, but when he did, people listened. It is a trap, Taeho said simply. They want to cut off the head. If they take you, humanity loses its voice. Dr. Minji Cho was the last to speak. She was older than the others, with white streaks in her black hair and gentle hands that had healed thousands of patients across dozens of worlds. She studied alien biology and culture, and she understood things about the galaxy that most humans never considered. The Council does not make threats, Minji said softly. They do not need to. If they say failure to appear is an act of war, they mean it. We have no choice, John. You must go. John looked at his crew. These were people he trusted with his life. They had traveled together for 5 years. They had B's life, Ender said, through dangers that would have broken weaker teams. They were more than colleagues. They were family. Then we go together, John said. The journey to Council Station took 3 weeks. During that time, John barely slept. He read everything he could find about the Council and its members. He studied their laws, their histories, their wars. He learned about the species they had welcomed into the galactic community. And he learned about the species that had simply vanished from history. Their names erased. Their worlds empty. Una worked beside him, translating ancient texts and intercepting communications. She found whispers in the data streams, hints of what was coming. The Council was angry. They believed humans were dangerous, but there was something more. Something she could not quite understand. Fear. The Council was afraid of humanity. Taeho spent his time checking weapons and running combat drills. He did not believe they would need to fight. The Council's military power was beyond anything humanity could match. But he prepared anyway, because that was who he was. Minji prayed. She was not religious in any traditional sense, but she believed in something larger than herself. She prayed for wisdom, for peace, for the survival of her species. When the Horizon's Edge finally arrived at Council Station, John stood at the viewport and looked at the most impressive structure he had ever seen. The station was larger than a moon, a sphere of silver and gold that floated in the darkness between stars. Ships from 1,000 worlds moved around it, like insects around a hive. Lights flickered across its surface, each one representing a culture, a history, a people. Beautiful, Yuna whispered. Terrifying, Teho replied. They docked at a port reserved for diplomatic vessels. Council guards were waiting for them. These were tall creatures with 4 arms and faces that showed no emotion. They wore armor that seemed to absorb light, and they carried weapons that hummed with energy. John Morrison, one of them said. You will come with us. Alone. John looked back at his crew. Yuna reached out and squeezed his hand. Teho gave him a small nod. Minji touched his shoulder and whispered, Remember who you are. Then John walked forward, and the guards surrounded him. They led him through corridors that seemed to go on forever. The walls were covered with images of alien worlds and alien faces. Some were beautiful. Some were strange. Some were no longer alive. Their species gone from the universe. John wondered if humanity would join them soon. Finally, they reached a massive door. It was made of a metal that John did not recognize, carved with symbols that hurt his eyes to look at. The guard stepped aside, and the door opened slowly. John Morrison walked into the council chamber. It was a vast room, larger than any building on Earth. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above. The floor was polished stone that reflected the light of 1,000 floating crystals. And there, arranged in a half-circle, were the 12 members of the Galactic Council. They were ancient, beyond human understanding. Some were made of flesh and bone. Some were made of energy and light. Some were things that John's mind could not fully process, shapes that shifted and changed with every moment. They had ruled the galaxy since before humans had learned to make fire. The High Speaker floated at the center. It was a being of pure crystal, glowing with inner light, older than Earth itself. Human, it said. And its voice was like thunder and ice. You stand accused of crimes against galactic order. How do you answer? John Morrison stood alone before the most powerful beings in the universe. His heart was pounding, his hands were shaking, but he lifted his chin and looked into the light. I am ready to hear your charges, he said, and the trial of humanity began. The High Speaker's light grew brighter as it began to speak. John Morrison stood alone in the center of the great chamber, surrounded by 12 ancient beings who looked down at him like giants looking at an insect. He forced himself to breathe slowly, to stay calm. The first charge, the High Speaker said, is violation of the non-interference doctrine. 47 galactic cycles ago, the planet Velos Prime entered a state of civil war. The Council declared this an internal matter. No species was permitted to intervene. But humans did not obey. A screen of light appeared in the air, showing images that John remembered well. Ships burning in orbit, cities in flames, millions of refugees running for their lives as armies fought around them. Human vessels entered Velos Prime space without permission, the High Speaker continued. Human soldiers landed on the surface. Human ships carried refugees away from the planet. This was a direct violation of galactic law. Quote, John wanted to speak, to explain that those refugees would have died without help. But he knew this was not the time. He stayed silent and listened. The second charge, another council member spoke. This one was a creature of shadow and smoke, with eyes like distant stars. Dangerous technological acceleration. Your species developed faster than light travel in only 200 years. This process takes most species 3,000 years or more. Such rapid advancement is unnatural. It is dangerous. It suggests that humans are willing to take risks that threaten the stability of the galaxy. John almost laughed at this. Humans were being accused of learning too fast. But the council members' eyes held no humor, only cold judgment. The third charge, said a being that looked like a tree made of metal and glass. Biological contamination. Human ideas have spread across the galaxy like a disease. Your music, your art, your stories, your emotions. Younger species have begun to imitate human behavior. They question their leaders. They demand change. They speak of something called hope. This contamination threatens the order we have maintained for 10,000 years. John's jaw tightened. Hope was now a crime. He wondered what his father would say about that. His father had always told him that hope was the most human thing of all. The fourth charge, the high speaker said, and its voice dropped lower, colder. The incident at Kepler Station. 3 years ago, a human crew discovered a council facility in deep space. This facility housed a black hole generator, a weapon of last resort, controlled by this council. The human crew destroyed the facility. 17 council observers died. The weapon was lost. And won. John remembered that day. He remembered the report he had received. The names of the crew who had given their lives. They had discovered that the council was building a weapon capable of destroying entire star systems. They had made a choice. These are the charges against humanity, the high speaker concluded. How do you answer? Before John could speak, the chamber's doors opened. A council guard entered and whispered something to the high speaker. The great being's light flickered with annoyance. We will pause for 1 hour, the high speaker announced. The human may rest and prepare his defense. John was led to a small room with no windows. The door locked behind him. He sat down on a cold metal bench and put his head in his hands. Far away, aboard the horizon's edge, his crew was working desperately. Una sat at her station, her fingers flying across the controls. She had managed to tap into the council's encrypted communications, something that should have been impossible. What she found made her blood run cold. Tejo, she called out. Come look at this. The security commander walked over and read the messages on her screen. His face grew dark. The trial is fake, he said quietly. Una nodded. Humanity will be quarantined. All human ships will be recalled to Earth. All human colonies will be abandoned. We will never be allowed to leave our home system again. It will be a prison for our entire species. Tejo's hands formed fists. How long do we have? The verdict will be announced in 6 hours. Council warships are already moving toward human colonies. They are not taking any chances. Quote, in another part of the ship, Minji was searching through old data files. She had been studying the Council's history for years, and something had always bothered her. There were gaps in the records, species that appeared in ancient texts but were never mentioned again, worlds that had once held great civilizations but were now empty. She finally found what she was looking for, buried deep in files that had been marked as corrupted. Oh no, she whispered. She ran to find the others. When she reached the bridge, Una and Tejo looked up at her pale face. I found something, Minji said. The Council has done this before. Not quarantine. Something worse. There have been species that the Council considered too dangerous, too unpredictable, too different. The Council did not imprison them. The Council erased them. Erased? Destroyed. Completely. Their planets, their ships, their people, everything. The Council removed them from existence, and then removed them from history. No one remembers they ever lived. Minji's voice was shaking. There are at least 7 species that I can identify. Maybe more. The Council killed them all, because they were afraid. The 3 crew members looked at each other in silence. We have to tell the captain, Una said. How? Tejo asked. He is locked in that station. We cannot reach him. Una thought for a moment. Then she smiled, just a little. The Council thinks humans are primitive. They think we do not understand their technology. But I have been studying their systems for 5 years. She turned back to her station. I cannot send him a message directly. But I can make sure he knows we are still fighting for him. She began to work, her fingers moving faster than ever before. In his cold cell, John Morrison looked up as the lights flickered once, twice, 3 times. A pattern. An old pattern that Una had taught him years ago. Hope. Fight. We are with you. John stood up and straightened his uniform. He did not know what his crew had discovered. He did not know what was coming. But he knew one thing for certain. He was not alone. The door opened, and the guards returned. "The council is ready for you," one of them said. John Morrison walked back into the chamber. 12 ancient beings watched him with eyes that had seen civilizations die. "You may now speak in defense of your species," the High Speaker said. "You have 1 hour." John looked around the room. He took a deep breath, and then he began to speak. John Morrison did not begin with arguments. He did not begin with facts or laws or protests of innocence. Instead, he began with a question. "How many people lived on Velos Prime before the war?" he asked. The council members shifted uncomfortably. The High Speaker's light flickered. "That is not relevant to these proceedings," the High Speaker said. 12 billion, John answered his own question. 12 billion living beings. Men, women, children, families, communities. A civilization that had existed for thousands of years. And when the war came, when their cities burned and their leaders fled, this council declared it an internal matter. You watched them die. You had the power to help, and you chose to do nothing. The non-interference doctrine exists for a reason, a council member said. Its voice was like grinding stone. Intervention leads to dependency. Dependency leads to weakness. Weakness leads to extinction. And how many of those 12 billion survived because of your doctrine? John asked. How many children are alive today because you followed your rules? Silence. Humans saved 300 million refugees from Velos Prime, John said. Our ships flew into a war zone. Our people risked their lives. Not because we wanted territory, not because we wanted power. We did it because people were dying, and we could not stand by and watch. He turned slowly, looking at each council member. In turn, you call this a crime. I call it being human. Reen, the shadow creature, spoke next. You speak of emotion, as if it were a virtue. But emotion is dangerous. It leads to chaos. It leads to war. The galaxy has known 10,000 years of peace under our guidance. Humanity threatens that peace. John nodded slowly. Yes, humans are emotional. We feel things deeply. We love. We hate. We fear. We hope. And sometimes, those emotions lead us to do terrible things. I will not deny that. Human history is full of darkness. He paused. But our emotions also lead us to do extraordinary things. Things that cold logic would never allow. John reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. He held it up, and a holographic image appeared in the air. It showed a man with a kind face and rough hands. This is Junho Lee, John said. He was a farmer on Mars colony. 30 years ago, there was an accident at a power plant near his village. Radiation flooded the area. Everyone was told to evacuate. But a school shelter had collapsed, and there were children trapped inside. The image changed to show a burning building under a red sky. The rescue team said it was too dangerous. The radiation would kill anyone who went in. They said to wait for robots, for drones, for something safer. But Junho Lee did not wait. He walked into that radiation storm with nothing but his bare hands. He pulled 9 children from the rubble. He saved their lives. John's voice grew quiet. He died 3 days later. The radiation destroyed his body. He knew it would. He went in anyway. The council was silent. John brought up another image. A woman with tired eyes and a gentle smile. This is Hana Yoon. She was a doctor. 40 years ago, she was assigned to a planet called Revik 3. A plague was killing the population. Other species had given up on finding a cure. They said it was impossible. They left. The image showed a hospital filled with the sick and dying. Hana stayed. For 40 years, she worked alone on that planet. She watched her patients die, one after another. She caught the plague herself 3 times. Each time, she survived and kept working. And finally, after 4 decades of failure, she found a cure. She saved an entire species. John looked at the tree-like council member. You call human ideas a contamination. You say we spread hope like a disease. Hana Yoon spent 40 years hoping when everyone else had given up. Is that really something to fear? He brought up a final image. A young man, in a pilot's uniform, smiling at the camera. This is Sun Woo Baek. He was a pilot. 5 years ago, he was escorting a convoy of refugee ships through dangerous space. Raiders attacked. Sun Woo's ship was hit. His engines were failing. His weapons were destroyed. The image changed to show a damaged fighter drifting through an asteroid field. The raiders had a larger ship heading straight for the convoy. If it reached them, thousands would die. Sun Woo could have ejected. He could have saved himself. Instead, he flew his broken ship directly into the raider vessel. He destroyed it with his own body. John turned off the device. The images faded. Junho Lee. Hana Yoon. Sun Woo Baek. These are not unusual humans. Every human world has stories like theirs. Every human family knows someone who gave everything for others. This is not a weakness. Hana Yoon? Axis not a weakness. This is what makes us who we are. He stepped forward, closer to the council than any human had ever stood. You call us aggressive. But we do not fight because we love violence. We fight because we love something more than ourselves. Our families, our friends, our neighbors, complete strangers who need our help. His voice rose. You have ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. You have maintained order. You have kept peace. But what have you built? What have you created? You have preserved the galaxy like a museum, frozen and unchanging. You are so afraid of chaos that you have forgotten how to live. The high speaker's light flared with anger. You dare lecture us? You, a species that is barely out of its cradle? Yes, John said. I dare. Because in our short time among the stars, humans have saved more lives than the Council saved in 1,000 years. We have inspired more joy, more creativity, more growth than all your careful rules and ancient wisdom. He spread his arms wide. You see chaos when you look at humanity. But we see something else. We see possibility. We see a universe that could be better than it is. We see hope. The council members looked at each other. Some seemed uncertain. Others seemed angry. The high speaker's light grew colder. Pretty words, the high speaker said. But words do not change facts. Humanity is a threat to galactic stability. The evidence is clear. The verdict is... The chamber shook. Alarms began to scream. The lights flickered and went dark, then came back in emergency red. A council guard ran into the chamber, its 4 arms waving frantically. High Speaker! It shouted. We are under attack. The high speaker turned its light toward the guard. Attack? By whom? The guard's voice trembled with something that sounded like fear. The Void Walkers. They have returned. 1. On. 1. 1. Every council member froze. For the first time, John saw something in their ancient eyes that he recognized. Terror. That is impossible, the tree creature said. We destroyed them 5,000 years ago. They are here, the guard said. Thousands of ships. They are destroying everything in their path. John Morrison looked at the council. These beings, who had judged humanity, who had called humans dangerous and primitive and emotional, now they sat paralyzed by fear, unable to act. He made his decision in less than a second. Open a channel to my ship, he said. The high speaker stared at him. What? Open a channel. Now. Unless you want to die today. The high speaker hesitated, then waved a crystalline limb. A communication screen appeared. Yuna's face filled the screen. Behind her, John could see Tejo and Minji working frantically. "Captain!" Yuna shouted. "The station is surrounded. There are thousands of enemy ships. Council forces are being destroyed." John nodded grimly. "Get me a tactical link. Contact every human ship in the sector. Tell them we have work to do." Yuna's eyes widened. "Sir? After what the Council tried to do to us?" John looked at the ancient beings around him. They had wanted to imprison humanity forever. They had killed entire species out of fear. They were everything humans should hate. But they were also living beings. And they were about to die. "Do it," John said. "That is an order." Yuna nodded once. "Yes, Captain." The screen went dark. John Morrison turned to face the Council. "Stay here," he said. "Try not to get in the way." Then he walked out of the chamber, toward the sound of war. The Voidwalkers had waited 5,000 years for this moment. They had hidden in the darkness between galaxies, growing stronger, building their fleet, preparing their revenge. The Council had tried to destroy them long ago, and they had never forgotten. Now they had come to return the favor. John Morrison ran through the corridors of Council Station as explosions shook the walls around him. Emergency lights flashed red. Alien civilians ran past him, screaming in languages he did not understand. Through the windows, he could see the battle in space. Council warships, the most powerful vessels in the galaxy, were burning like paper in a fire. He found his crew waiting for him at the docking port. Yuna had a communication device in her ear, coordinating with human ships across the sector. Tejo had a weapon in each hand, ready for anything. Minji carried a medical kit, prepared to heal the wounded. "Report," John said as they ran toward the horizon's edge. 47 human ships have responded to our call," Yuna said. "They are coming from colonies across 3 systems. But Captain, the enemy fleet has over 3,000 vessels. We are outnumbered 60-1. What about Council forces?" Tejo made a sound of disgust. "Running, hiding. They have not faced a real enemy in centuries. They do not know how to fight." They reached the horizon's edge and ran aboard. The engines were already warming up. John took his place in the captain's chair and looked at the tactical display. It was worse than Yuna had described. The Voidwalker ships were everywhere. Dark shapes that moved like predators through the chaos. Their weapons cut through Council defenses like they were not even there. "Open a channel to all human ships," John said. Yuna pressed a button. "Channel open, Captain." John spoke clearly into the communication system. "This is Captain John Morrison of the Horizon's Edge. I know you have heard what the Council planned to do to us. I know you have every reason to turn around and let them face this enemy alone. But that is not who we are. He paused, watching as more Council ships exploded on his display. "Humanity does not help only those who deserve it. We help because it is right. Because every life has value. Because we believe that what we do today will echo through the stars for 1,000 years. Today, we show the galaxy what humans are made of." A voice crackled back through the channel. "Captain Morrison, this is Captain Do-Hyun Kang of the Starlight. My squadron is with you. Tell us where to fight." Another voice followed. "Commander Bora Shin, Medical Frigate Grace. We are ready to rescue survivors." More voices joined. Ship after ship. Human after human. They were afraid. John could hear it in their voices. But they came anyway. "All ships, form up on my position," John ordered. "Captain Kang, take your squadron and draw fire from the enemy formation. Keep them focused on you. Commander Shin, stay behind the line and pick up escape pods from damaged ships. I do not care if they are human or not. We save everyone we can." "Maybe. 2. Understood, Captain." The human fleet moved forward. 47 ships against 3,000. It should have been suicide. But John had something the Void Walkers did not expect. Aboard the Horizon's Edge, a young engineer named Jiwan Nam was working at a computer console. He had spent years studying Council technology, learning its secrets, finding its weaknesses. Now he put that knowledge to use. "Captain," Jiwan said, "Council Station has an old defense grid. It was built thousands of years ago and never used. The Council forgot it even existed. But I can bring it online." "Do it," John said. Jiwan's fingers flew across the controls. Deep within Council Station, ancient machines began to wake. Weapons that had not fired in 5,000 years charged with energy. Defense shields that had been dormant since before humanity existed flickered to life. The station's lights changed from red to blue. And then the sky lit up with fire. Massive beams of energy shot out from the station, cutting through Voidwalker ships like lightning through clouds. The enemy formation scattered in confusion. They had not expected this. They had not planned for it. "Now!" John shouted. The human fleet dove into the chaos. They were small and fast, moving in patterns the Voidwalkers could not predict. Captain Kang led his squadron directly into the heart of the enemy formation, dodging fire that should have destroyed them 10 times over. "Come on," Kang shouted to his pilots. "Show them what humans can do." His ship struck again and again, hitting weak points, drawing enemy ships away from Council Station. 3 of his pilots died in the first minute, 5 more in the next. But they kept fighting. Commander Shin flew her medical frigate into the middle of the battle. Escape pods floated everywhere, each one carrying living beings who would die without help. Her crew worked without rest, pulling survivors from the wreckage, healing the wounded, saving lives that the war was trying to end. "Commander," a crew member shouted, "that pod has council markings. Do we pick them up?" Shin did not hesitate. "We pick up everyone, no exceptions." Back on the Horizon's Edge, John coordinated the battle with a focus that surprised even himself. He saw patterns in the chaos, opportunities that others missed. He gave orders that saved ships, that turned defeats into victories, that kept the thin line of human defenders from breaking. Minji worked beside him, analyzing the Voidwalkers. She found their weakness after 3 hours of battle. Their communication system was linked through a central ship, a massive vessel at the back of their fleet. "If we destroy that ship, their coordination will collapse," she said. "They will become a mob instead of an army." John looked at the tactical display. The command ship was surrounded by hundreds of defenders. Getting to it would be almost impossible. "Captain Kang," he said into the communication channel, "I have a target for you." Kang's voice came back, tired but determined. "My squadron is down to 6 ships, Captain, but we are ready. I need you to get close to their command vessel. Find a way through their defenses." There was a pause. Both men knew what John was really asking. This was likely a one-way mission. "Understood," Kang said finally. "It has been an honor, Captain Morrison. The honor is mine, Captain Kang. Good luck." Kang's squadron began their run. They flew into a wall of enemy fire, twisting and turning, sacrificing themselves one by one to get closer to the target. Kang himself was the last one left, his ship burning, his systems failing, but he reached the command vessel. His final words were broadcast across every channel in the sector. "For humanity." Then his ship exploded against the enemy command vessel, and the Voidwalker fleet began to fall apart. The battle raged for 8 more hours. Without their central command, the Voidwalkers fought like wild animals. Dangerous, but disorganized. The human fleet, working together, destroyed them piece by piece. Council forces finally joined the fight in the last hours, inspired by the example the humans had set. Ships that had been hiding came forward. Weapons that had been silent began to fire. The galaxy remembered how to fight. When it was over, the Voidwalker fleet was broken. The survivors scattered into the darkness, defeated for the second time. But this victory had cost much. John stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge and listened as the names of the dead were read aloud. Pilot Seo-jun, Oh, who had crashed his fighter into an enemy cruiser to protect a civilian transport. Medic Nari-jung, who had died shielding wounded aliens with her own body. Captain Hyun Lim, whose last transmission had been a message to her daughter, telling her to be brave. Over 2,000 humans had died in the battle. 18 ships had been destroyed. Families across human space would receive news that would break their hearts. But the galaxy was saved. And everyone who survived knew exactly who had saved it. John Morrison sat down in his chair and closed his eyes. He was exhausted beyond words, but they had won. Now came the harder part, facing the Council again. The great chamber of the Galactic Council looked different now. Scars from the battle marked its walls. Some of the floating lights had been destroyed and not yet replaced. The floor that had once been perfectly polished was covered in dust and debris. But the 12 ancient beings still sat in their places, looking down at John Morrison. He stood where he had stood before, in the center of the room. But this time, he was not alone. His crew stood behind him. Yuna, Taeho, Minji, and Jiwon. They had refused to let him face the council without them. Not again. The High Speaker's light was dimmer than it had been before the battle. The crystalline being looked tired. If such a thing were possible for a creature of pure energy, it floated down from its place and stopped in front of John, closer than it had ever come to a human. "We have been alive for a very long time," the High Speaker said. Its voice was softer now, almost gentle. "We have seen empires rise and fall. We have watched stars die. We believed we understood everything there was to understand about the universe." John said nothing. He waited. "We were wrong." The words hung in the air. Around the chamber, the other council members stirred. Some seemed uncomfortable. Others nodded, slowly. "When the Void Walkers attacked, we froze," the High Speaker continued. "We had not faced true danger in so long that we had forgotten how to respond to it. We were ready to die. We had accepted our end." The being's light pulsed softly. "But you did not accept it. You ran toward the danger instead of away from it. You called your people to fight for beings who had just tried to condemn them. You saved lives that we had given up as lost." The High Speaker paused. Why? It was the same question that had been asked of John after the battle. The same question that every survivor on Council Station had whispered to each other. Why did the humans help us? John looked at the ancient being for a long moment before answering. "Because that is what humans do," he said. "We do not wait for people to deserve saving. We just save them. And maybe, one day, they save someone else." The High Speaker was silent. Then it did something that no human had ever seen a council member do. It lowered its crystalline form in what looked almost like a bow. "The charges against humanity are dismissed," the High Speaker announced. "The verdict of quarantine is withdrawn. All council warships will return to their positions. Human colonies will not be touched. Every 3. Redder 7. Every 3. Every 3. Every 3. Every 3. John felt relief wash through him. Behind him, Yuna let out a small breath. Taeho's shoulders relaxed slightly. But the High Speaker was not finished. "For 10,000 years, this council has ruled alone. We have made decisions for the entire galaxy, believing that our age gave us wisdom. But wisdom that cannot change is not wisdom at all. It is stubbornness." The other council members leaned forward, listening intently. "The Void Walkers were our mistake. We tried to destroy them. Instead of understanding them, we created the hatred that nearly destroyed us all. And when they returned, we were helpless." The High Speaker's light grew brighter. "Humanity showed us a different way. You showed us that strength can come from compassion, that order does not require fear. that there is power in hope. The being turned to address the entire chamber. I propose that we offer humanity a seat on this council, not as subjects or observers, but as equal partners in the governance of the galaxy. The chamber erupted in reaction. Some council members protested loudly. Others voiced their support. The debate raged for nearly an hour, with arguments flying back and forth in a dozen languages. John waited patiently. He had said what he came to say. The rest was up to them. Finally, the High Speaker called for a vote. One by one, the council members made their choice. The result was 9 in favor, 3 against. For the first time in 10,000 years, a new species would join the Galactic Council. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On every human world, people gathered to watch the announcement. There were celebrations on Earth, on Mars, on every colony humanity had built among the stars. But there were also moments of silence, as people remembered those who had died to make this possible. In the days that followed, John Morrison was asked to take the council seat. He was the obvious choice. He had stood before the council and spoken for humanity. He had led the defense against the Voidwalkers. His name was known throughout the galaxy, but John refused. "I am just a captain," he said. "I belong on a ship, not in a council chamber. Find someone who believes in this more than I do." He recommended Una Park instead. Una had spent her entire adult life trying to understand alien cultures. She had learned their languages, studied their histories, found the connections that linked all living beings together. She believed in a galaxy where different species could work together, could learn from each other, could build something greater than any of them could achieve alone. When John told her his recommendation, she stared at him in shock. "Me? I am a communications officer. I am not a leader." John smiled. "You are exactly what the galaxy needs. Someone who listens before speaking. Someone who sees the good in others. Someone who believed in this dream before any of us." Una looked at her captain, at the man who had taught her so much. "Are you sure?" she asked. "I have never been more sure of anything in my life." 2 weeks later, a new seat was installed in the council chamber. It was smaller than the others, built for a being that had existed for only a moment in cosmic time. But it sat among the ancient powers of the galaxy as an equal. Una Park took her place in that seat, and a new era began. John Morrison returned to his ship. There was still work to do, still stars to explore, still people who needed help. The Horizon's Edge launched from Council Station and headed out into the unknown, carrying its captain and crew toward new adventures. But the story was not quite over. 3 months after the battle, a signal arrived at Council Station. It came from a region of space that no known species had explored. The signal contained a simple message, translated into 1,000 languages. "We have heard the stories. We have heard what humans did." A new species had learned about humanity. They had heard about the battle with the Voidwalkers. They had heard about humans who sacrificed themselves for strangers. They had heard about hope, and they wanted to know more. Una brought the message to the council. The ancient beings debated what to do. Some wanted to send a delegation. Others wanted to wait and gather more information. They argued for days. Finally, Una made a suggestion. "Let me send a message back," she said. "Let me tell them about humanity. Not our weapons, or our technology, or our military strength. Let me tell them about Junho Lee walking into a radiation storm, about Hana Yun working alone for 40 years, about Captain Kang's final words." The council agreed. Una sent the message. She told the unknown species the story of humanity, the story of beings who loved so fiercely that they would give everything for others. Beings who hoped, even when there was no reason to hope. Beings who believed that the universe could always be better than it was. The response came quickly. "We understand now. You are not like the others. Please come. We have much to learn from each other." Una smiled as she read the message. Then she opened a channel to a ship that was 3 systems away. exploring the edges of known space. "Captain Morrison," she said, "I have a new mission for you." John's voice came back, warm and familiar. "There is a species out there that wants to meet humanity. They are waiting for us." John looked out the viewport of the horizon's edge at the endless stars. Behind him, his crew prepared for another journey, another adventure, another chance to show the galaxy what humans could be. "Tell them we are on our way," he said. And the story continued. The stars had seen empires rise and fall. They had watched civilizations bloom and die across billions of years. They had witnessed wonders and horrors beyond imagination, but they had never seen anything quite like humanity, a species that fought not for power, but for others. That hoped when hope was foolish. That loved so deeply it would sacrifice everything. The galaxy would never be the same. And perhaps that was exactly what it needed.